Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to stand before you today as we consider the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development and Related Agencies Bill for Fiscal Year 2024. I'm glad that we're back at work making appropriations, moving appropriations bills through the House floor under our new Speaker. We're continuing to fulfill our constitutional duties. I would like to thank Chairman Granger, Ranking Member DeLauro, and my partner on this bill, Ranking Member Mike Quigley. This bill responsibly funds our most critical transportation and housing needs and will have a positive impact on every congressional district in the country. At the same time, the bill meets the challenge before us to reduce spending and get our debt under control. The bill reduces spending 25% below fiscal year 2023 levels with a CBO score of $65 billion. We achieved these savings through a rescission of IRS funds and by reducing billions in excessive spending. To really compare the bill to last year, we need to be honest about what the fiscal year 2023 bill actually contained. First, I'd like to point out that last year, my Democratic friends labeled an extra $3.6 billion as emergency funding. We do not repeat that mistake this year. Second, the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development Bill uses receipts from HUD-backed mortgages and refinancing to offset spending. In fiscal year 2023, this provided $10 billion to offset spending. For fiscal year 2024, that receipt number is down over 70%. Why? Few people want to refinance at an 8% interest rate. So the real level of spending in the THUD bill was $101 billion in 2023 compared to $93 billion in the same bill before us today. This is a decrease of $8 billion, bringing a total slightly below the 2022 level. Every year, areas across government face unavoidable cost increases in some programs. I believe we need to be responsible when addressing these costs. This bill does just that by cutting excess, removing duplication, and even trimming some programs that are quite frankly popular on both sides of the aisle. But we also make some priorities. We also make sure to prioritize the core missions of DOT and HUD. We prioritize transportation safety on our railways, roads, and airways. I'm proud that we provide the resources for the Federal Aviation Administration to hire 1,800 new air traffic controllers to backfill the retiring workforce and deploy air traffic controllers to understaffed facilities. We also provide funding for the most critical air traffic control modernization programs. We all feel the impact of a strained air traffic control system. This bill will address some of those strains. These investments will generate economic growth and ensure uninterrupted air service, which is critical for rural and remote communities and metropolitan areas alike. This bill provides $60 billion for highways and bridges through the Highway Trust Fund. These resources are directly allocated to our state departments of transportation, enabling state and local governments to collaborate on the highest priority road projects. The bill prioritizes safety programs at the Department of Transportation to ensure that our roads and railways are safe for freight haulers and the traveling public. The bill supports the DOT's maritime mission with full funding for its national security programs. And we ensure that responsible safety net of housing support for our most vulnerable citizens, especially the elderly, the disabled, veterans, and the working poor. These programs are run at the local level through public housing authorities, private landlords, and faith-based organizations. The bill supports self-sufficiency programs so that families can move up and out of rental assistance. Our housing assistance program should be a hand up, not a handout. I've heard from members on both sides of the aisle about the importance of community development block grants, or CDBGs as they're known. So we provide the FY23 enacted level of $3.3 billion for this program. I'm proud of the work that we've done in this bill to meet our trust and treaty responsibilities to Native Americans. For years, HUD tribal programs have languished, their buying power eroded by inflation. At the same time, much of the housing on tribal lands has deteriorated to the point of being dangerous and uninhabitable. So we have increased the Indian Housing Block Grant Program to $1.1 billion, catching up to an inflation-adjusted 1998 level. While this does not make up for decades of underinvestment, it's at least a start. The bill also increases investments in historically underfunded tribal road programs. The bill includes provisions that will scale back the Biden administration's regulatory overreach. For example, we prohibit funds to implement the affirmatively furthering fair housing rule at HUD. This does nothing to impair HUD's enforcement of the Fair Housing Act, but it cuts red tape for public housing authorities and for other recipients of HUD funds. The bill also bars HUD from imposing new carbon emissions reduction targets for highway projects. This would be particularly burdensome for small and rural communities. In addition, the bill provides for funds, prohibits funds for drones subsidized by the Chinese government. This will safeguard our national security and create a fair playing field for American manufacturers. These are just a few of the policy provisions in the bill that will scale back the Biden administration's overreach. I'm pleased that we will consider several amendments that will do even more to keep a check on the excesses of the administration. I want to thank members of the House for their input on this bill. We received roughly 9,000 requests and were able to meet over 2/3 of them, including community project funding for transportation infrastructure and bricks and mortar community development projects. The alternative to passing this and other appropriations bills is a continuing resolution. Let me remind all members that a CR will serve no one well. This bill is an ideal example of why we must avoid putting government on autopilot. Under a CR, our air traffic control system would suffer delays because of staffing shortages. Housing assistance would be revoked from vulnerable Americans, and spending that is no longer needed from fiscal year 2023 would be carried forward for another year. We must avoid that outcome. In closing, I'm very pleased that we're moving forward, and I urge my colleagues to support this legislation. With that, Mr. Chairman, I reserve the balance of my time.